Have you ever walked through a commercial orchard, like a massive apple orchard or a palm oil plantation?
Oh, sure. It's impressive in a way, just row after row of the exact same tree, perfectly spaced, extending all the way to the horizon.
It feels efficient, doesn't it? It feels like we've conquered nature and turned it into a factory. But here's the thing, and this is what we're digging into today. Nature doesn't build factories. Nature builds forests.
Right, and when we try to force nature into that factory mold, what we call monoculture, we start seeing cracks in the system. Soil degradation, pest explosions, this endless need for chemical fertilizers just to keep the whole thing on life support.
Exactly. So the question is, can we farm in a way that actually looks and acts like a forest, but still feeds us? Today we're talking about analog food forestry. And before you think this is just some new age gardening trend, it's actually deeply rooted in ancient traditions, specifically from Sri Lanka, but backed by modern ecological science.
It's a fascinating concept. It's not just about planting trees, it's about designing a system that mimics the architectural structure and the biological function of a natural forest. The idea is to get the resilience of a wild ecosystem, but the productivity of a farm.
So let's break that down. Analog. It means comparable or similar to. So we are creating an analogy of a forest.
Precisely. The International Analog Forestry Network, or IAFN, describes it as a way to restore life support systems. Instead of clearing land to plant one thing, you're building a complex, multi-layered environment. If you walk into a natural rainforest, you don't just see one layer of trees.
No, it's chaotic. It's three-dimensional.
It looks chaotic, but it's highly organized. And Analog Food Forestry, or AFF, copies that organization. They identify distinct layers. You start at the very top with the emergent layer. These are your tall, protective trees that break the wind and provide shade.
Okay, so that's the roof.
Right. Then below that, you have the canopy layer. This is where you'd find your major fruit trees, maybe mango or jackfruit. Below that is the understory, shrubs, spices, maybe coffee or cacao. Then the herb layer with vegetables and leafy greens, and it goes all the way down to the ground cover, like creepers, and finally the root layer with tubers.
It's incredible density. In a monoculture field, you're using maybe 2 feet of vertical space. Here, you're using 100 feet. But isn't that competitive? Don't the big trees steal all the sunlight and water from the vegetables?
That's the common assumption in industrial agriculture. But in a well-designed AFF system, the relationships are symbiotic, not just competitive. The tall trees might shade the delicate spices that would burn in direct sun. The deep roots of the emergent trees pull up water from aquifers that the vegetables can't reach. It's a cooperative economy, not a zero-sum game.
And this isn't something that was just invented in a university lab last year. You mentioned Sri Lanka earlier. I was reading about the Gay Uyan system. Can you explain that connection?
This is really the heart of the methodology. Gay Yuan translates roughly to home garden. In Sri Lanka, this is an ancestral practice. These aren't just decorative flower beds. They are intensely productive ecosystems surrounding the family home. Historically, these were managed primarily by women.
Which is a crucial detail. When we talk about industrial farming, we usually picture men on giant tractors, but the home garden is the domain of household nutrition.
Exactly. The Gay Yuan was designed for family security. You'd have a mix of everything: coconut and jackfruit for heavy calories, leafy greens for vitamins, spices for flavor and trade, and medicinal plants for healthcare. It provided year-round food without needing to buy fertilizers or pesticides.
That point about year-round food is interesting. In the US, we're used to harvest season being this one massive event in the fall, but a forest doesn't work on a single clock.
No, and that's the security aspect. If you plant 10 acres of just soybeans and a drought hits at the wrong month, you lose everything. You have zero resilience. But in an analog food forest, because you have such biodiversity, different species fruiting at different times with different root depths, you have a buffer. If one crop fails, 3 others might thrive. It minimizes risk.
It buffers against economic risk too, right? I mean, if the global price of coffee crashes, but you also have cinnamon, pepper, and bananas growing on the same plot, you aren't destitute.
It decouples the farmer from the volatility of the global commodities market. It's local resilience. But Jake, there's another layer to this that I think is often overlooked in Western agricultural discussions, and that's the role of medicine.
Yeah, I saw that in the notes. The idea of the garden as a pharmacy.
It's literal. In the AFF model, you don't just plant calories, you integrate medicinal plants. You might have herbs for digestion, plants with anti-inflammatory properties, or roots used in traditional healing. When food and medicine grow together, healthcare becomes accessible.
It's interesting because we tend to separate those things completely. Food is the grocery store, medicine is the pharmacy. But for most of human history, and in these Geuyang gardens, they were the same place.
And that separation has costs. When we rely on industrial monocultures, we're often getting food that is lower in nutrient density and higher in chemical residues. AFF focuses on poison-free nutrition. By eliminating synthetic chemicals, you're instantly improving gut health and reducing chronic disease risk.
There's also a mental health angle here that caught me off guard. We know nature is good for you, generally speaking, but there's actual science on soil microbes?
It sounds wild, but yes, there is research specifically regarding a soil bacterium called Mycobacterium vaccae. Studies have suggested that exposure to this bacterium, just breathing it in or having it on your skin while gardening, can stimulate serotonin production.
So getting your hands dirty literally acts like an antidepressant.
Potentially, yes. It regulates mood and reduces anxiety. So when you're working in a diverse food forest, you aren't just harvesting calories, you're engaging in a practice that lowers stress hormones. It's a stark contrast to the high-stress environment of industrial farming, where farmers are often battling massive debt and fluctuating markets.
I want to pivot back to the ecological side for a moment. We talk a lot about climate change on this show. How does agroforestry actually stack up against climate instability?
It's one of the most robust systems we have for climate adaptation. Think about a monoculture field again. It's exposed, the soil dries out fast, heavy rain washes the topsoil away. Now picture the food forest. You have canopy cover that lowers the ground temperature.
So it creates its own microclimate.
Exactly. And the leaf litter, the dead leaves falling from those different layers, creates a natural mulch. This creates a sponge effect in the soil. It holds water. So when a drought comes, the food forest stays green weeks longer than the cornfield next door. And when a flood comes, those deep root systems hold the earth in place.
It seems like we're describing a silver bullet here, but I have to play devil's advocate. If this is so good, so resilient, so healthy, why isn't everyone doing it? Why is monoculture still the dominant force?
That is the million-dollar question. And the answer is largely about scale and the definition of efficiency. Monoculture is designed for machines. You can drive a combine harvester through a wheat field. You cannot drive a combine harvester through a multi-layered food forest.
Right, you can't automate a forest.
Not easily. AFF requires human labor and human intelligence. You have to know which plant is ready to harvest. You have to understand the interactions between species. It's knowledge intensive, whereas industrial farming is capital intensive.
So it requires a different kind of workforce. It requires people to be on the land rather than just one guy managing 1,000 acres from a GPS-guided tractor.
And that brings us to the social component. Ajantha Krihawadana, the trainer whose work we're discussing, points out that AFF empowers women and engages youth. It's not just about production, it's about rebuilding the community fabric. When you need knowledge to farm, you value the elders who hold that traditional wisdom.
It reverses that trend of rural brain drain, where young people feel like they have to leave the farm to do anything smart or profitable. This makes farming an intellectual design challenge.
Absolutely. It transforms the farmer from a laborer into an ecosystem designer. And for young people today facing climate anxiety, this is actionable. It's a way to restore the planet while making a living. You can see why it's being pitched as an educational tool for the next generation.
Let's talk about that educational aspect. If we want this to spread, how do we teach it? Because it feels like you need a PhD in botany to get it right.
You actually don't, and that's the beauty of it. It starts with observation. The first step in analog forestry isn't planting, it's looking at the nearest natural forest.
What grows there? How are the layers arranged? You essentially copy-paste that structure, but swap in species that are useful to humans.
So if the native forest has a tall canopy tree that doesn't produce food, you replace it with a tall canopy tree that does, like a nut tree or timber tree.
Right. You maintain the ecological function, the shade, the root structure, but you change the species to something economically valuable. It's biomimicry. And this is something students can do. They can map local forests, document the traditional home gardens in their area, and then design small-scale models.
It sounds like a reclaiming of heritage, too. You mentioned that these systems revive indigenous ecological wisdom.
It validates knowledge that was pushed aside during the Green Revolution. For decades, experts told farmers in places like Sri Lanka that their messy, mixed gardens were backward and that they needed clean rows of chemical-fed crops. AFF says, no, actually, your grandmothers were right. They understood soil regeneration and biodiversity better than the industrial agronomists did.
That cultural continuity is powerful. It stops farming from being just an economic transaction and turns it back into a way of life.
And it addresses the hidden hunger issue. We produce enough calories globally, but we don't produce enough nutrients. A child raised on a monoculture diet of mostly rice or wheat is often malnourished. A child raised in a home garden system has access to fruits, nuts, leafy greens, and clean protein. That diversity is the baseline for health.
I'm thinking about the biodiversity recovery aspect. We hear about the insect apocalypse, the massive drop in pollinators. Monocultures are basically food deserts for bees.
They are, but an AFF system is a sanctuary. Because you have flowers blooming at different times, you support pollinators year-round. You create habitats for birds that eat pests. It's a self-regulating system. In a monoculture, if you get a pest, you spray. In a food forest, if you get a pest, the birds and beneficial insects you've harbored usually take care of it.
It sounds almost utopian, but I know it's hard work. Establishing these systems takes time. You can't just plant a mango tree and expect fruit next week.
That is the main barrier, time. Annual crops like corn give you a paycheck in 4 months. A food forest is a long-term investment. That's why the analog approach is smart. It includes fast-growing crops in the understory and herb layers to provide income while the canopy trees mature.
So you're growing vegetables and spices to pay the bills while you wait for the timber and fruit.
Exactly. It requires a shift in economic thinking from quarterly profits to generational wealth. But given the state of our soil and the climate, do we really have a choice?
That's the sobering part. We're running out of topsoil. We're running out of stable weather. This feels less like a nice to have and more like a lifeboat.
It is a lifeboat. But it's a lifeboat that's also a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a classroom. Ajantha Palihawadana frames it beautifully. It's not just a farming method, it's a philosophy of living in harmony with nature.
It challenges the very idea that humans are separate from nature. We usually think we have to protect nature from humans, or that humans have to exploit nature. This says humans can be a beneficial species within the ecosystem.
We can be the keystone species that creates abundance, rather than the invasive species that destroys it. By learning from the forest structure, we restore the soil, we bring back the water, and we feed ourselves better food.
So, for someone listening who maybe has a backyard or even just a community garden plot, what's the takeaway? We can't all plant 3-story rainforests.
You can apply the principles anywhere. Think in layers. Don't just plant lettuce. Plant a small fruit tree, put some berry bushes under it, plant herbs around the base, create that density. Stop spraying chemicals. Encourage the insects. Even a small patch of land can be an analog forest in miniature.
It's about complexity over simplicity.
Complexity is resilience. Simplicity is fragile. That's the lesson.
I love that. Complexity is resilience. It's a lesson for agriculture, but honestly, it's a lesson for life.
It really is.
This has been a real eye-opener. It's easy to get cynical about the environment, but concepts like analog food forestry show that the solutions are already here. They're growing in the ground and they've been practiced for centuries. We just need to pay attention.
And we need to get planting.
Right. If this conversation sparked something for you, whether you're a gardener, a foodie, or just someone who cares about where the world is heading, pass this episode along to a friend who needs a bit of hope today.